In this episode of Erudite Magic, I had the opportunity to talk to John Guastaferro while we were in Egypt together. That's right, this video was shot sitting on the Nile River on a boat. As you'll hear during the interview, I got to know John a little bit better. He's an absolutely lovely guy, and it was easy to see why he is so good at doing the work that he does, engaging with audiences, and sharing his passion, magic, with the rest of us. Throughout the interview, I've dropped some timestamps down in the description below to help you jump around to the questions that might be interesting to you, but I think you'll find that this is a meaningful conversation. Oh, and if you enjoy this interview, you may enjoy reading his books, and you can check out the review that I did of his latest one right up here. Without any further ado, let's jump right into my interview with John Guastaferro on the Nile River in Egypt. So I can't believe this, right? Here we are on the Nile River in Egypt with the one and only John Guastaferro.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Oh, thank you for being here. And it's been incredible to get to know you a little bit better too, I would add.
Likewise.
Because we've only met once, I think, at Magi Fest this past year.
Yeah, and even that was a brief sighting, and we've had a chance to jam and talk magic and unpack some things. It's been great.
And you gave a great lecture yesterday.
Oh, thank you.
Which touched on a couple pieces from your books, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of great feedback from people. So.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
So I want to ask you a couple questions
Sure.
around the book process. Obviously, being Erudite Magic, we talk about all things book related. You've seen the reviews and very generously interacted.
Right.
My question is, first of all, your original book, One Degree.
Yeah.
What made you want to write a book and decide to, put so much of your life and in magic into this one beautiful package?
I feel like kind of many years led to that. I want to go back a little bit. The first thing that got me in on the magic scene was I brainstormed DVDs, and I hung out at the castle for years, and I'd go every Wednesday night, just underground. No one knew who I was, but I was showing David Regal some things, Gordon Bean, the librarian, and just built this library of, original material. And then it was David Regal who said, you should get this stuff out there, right? So he opened the door to L&L Publishing, and Michael Lamar, David Regal, and John G. Who the heck's this, right? But I sent a demo tape, and Louis Falenga liked it well enough to do a double DVD set. But anyway, so that was my brand at that point, some original creative card magic that's not too hard to do. And Brainstorm really took off, and it caught the eye of like John Rockerbomber, John Bann, and other people. And then I had my second Storm DVD. So it was all about DVDs at that point. So I wasn't even thinking about books, but I got me on the map as a creator.
Right.
And then many years went. Well, probably about 7 years went by, and then this is kind of the next chapter, so to speak, right? Of getting things. And Regal and I were talking about how there's something just that's enduring about a book.
Yeah,
right? It could be on the shelf. It's on the shelf of the Magic Castle, which I've already won, because that's how amazing is that, right? But so I was at a point where I built up enough material, but also built up enough of a, not just a name, but like a reputation that I earned.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody should just put out a book. I mean, you have to.
And
when I put the first draft of that together, and I got to know Andy and Josh well through that, and I think it was their first hardcover book through Vanishing Ink, and I did it just for the love of it, and it just felt like the right time to release content, and based on accumulated knowledge, and not just on magic, but on all the the essays as well. So.
And that was 2012?
10.
That's right, 2010. Yeah. And what was that process like, to work with a publisher? I know it was Vanishing Ink's first one, but was it nerve-wracking?
It was great. I love creative collaboration. I've been involved in marketing for years, and now I channel those powers to the nonprofit sector. But so I have an eye for design, so it was very collaborative with Andy, especially in the beginning. He's laying it out, but I did the initial layout of these 3 photos in a row, and the cover I did. It's funny, I had my photographer friend, we did some photo mock-ups, and I told Andy, like, something like this. He goes, well, let's use that. The mock-up is well enough, right? So basically I designed the cover, the spine, everything, and kind of the basic stuff, and then Andy kind of just made it look good in the red highlights in the book, and then also that's the design part, right?
Right.
And then the editing process, I did for the first draft, and Andy had some ideas, not just on grammatical edits, but just like how do we make things jump off the page a bit more. And then I also remember on the essay part, especially, like Josh encouraged me to kind of unpack it some more.
Yeah.
And also, like, why should we care?
Yes.
You know, if I'm talking about your brand, let's talk a little bit about your background in branding and advertising. So we know you are an expert voice in this, and not just talking about a subject you have no, interest in talking about. So it encouraged me to do that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'll say, the premise of the book I had already. It was this whole 1 degree concept, and it came from a lot of different sources. And we know the term 1 degree. I think we all kind of innately know the idea that sometimes small things can lead to big impact. There's also at the time where my wife and I were talking about like 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon.
Right,
and I go, when I'm performing magic, I want a 1 degree connection to my audience. So there's different meanings of 1 degree. It's the boiling point. How 1 little degree can have a big difference, but it's also audience connections. That's another part of the whole thing. The concept came together. But through the editing process, like, it became I could highlight 1 degree throughout the book and not just have a cover and a title, but not tricks that embody that. So all the tricks, and then I probably changed some tricks around. So I really want every trick to embody this concept of 1 degree.
We'll get right back into the interview, but if you're wondering where you can pick up some of these books that John Guastaferro has talked about, like his excellent Nth Degree or 1 Degree, the original, you can shop with the sponsor of this week's video, Don's Magic and Books. Don is a specialized online magic dealer focused mostly on books, which makes him such a perfect fit for magicians like you, people who love books and understand the value that comes from the printed word. If you've never shopped with him, then don't worry, I'm going to drop some links down in the description below, but I want you to know that not only does he carry new books like John Guastaferro's books, but also old books that are out of print, harder to come by, are just plain unavailable. And he always does it at fabulous prices. If you're in the United States, you can qualify for fast and free shipping if you meet certain minimum thresholds. No matter what kind of book you're looking for, be sure to check out Don's Magic and Books this week as you shop to add titles to your library. Let's get back into the interview. It's interesting, I'm not alone in saying that you writing those essays I thought was great because it really did feel like I got to know John G a little bit. More so than just the tricks, because you read the tricks and you see yourself performing it, right? But when you read the essays, that was an interesting way to get to know your background, and you're sharing some branding tips, and there were things that I read that book when I was kind of first starting out in professional performing and helping me come up with, brand and thinking about things and how do I want to be presented and what am I interested in and how does that come together. So that was cool.
I was pleasantly surprised to hear some great feedback. Because you never know. I mean, we're magicians. We want tricks. And we often have that metric, and then we get an essay, and maybe an essay that's not specifically about magic. And it was well received. So I was really happy.
And it's like your performances, though, like yesterday. And I was going to say, and commend you for people who haven't seen John perform, you mix in music and other parts of your life in there. And it's actually really nice texture for the show because you see tricks, and that's great, and you get excited about it, and then you have, a song, and it's beautiful, and it just brings out a different emotion, and you come back to the magic. I want to go back to 2 points about the book. You talked about doing the Brainstorm DVD and then the book. How is it different for you coming up with the explanations and the way? I would assume that the medium of sharing it with people kind of changes how you think about it, or the level of detail that you can include and things like that, because your books are very meticulous in a good way. Like at the end you have notes and different thoughts about it and credits. And was there a difference between the DVD approach and just going in and shooting it in front of a live audience and then doing explanations?
Good point. I still have my notes from the DVD, and it was like the trick, the credits, because I want to make sure I hit all those, right? But it's conversational. I'm filming an explanation. And I could have inflection in my voice and this and that. You can't have that on the page unless you write it that way, right? And I want to make sure it just wasn't just so instructional. And basically, once I had the format, like, here's the effect. And even the effect, I try to describe from the whole thing is the audience lens. Right?
The script.
How does this trick appear to the audience? Not just what happens, right? So the effect, then the background, because I like reading books.
I love that.
Where it's just like, here's a trick that I did this, and I did it at a restaurant, and the staff went crazy. Like, think people like to hear that, right? So I shared a little bit about myself, but also a little bit about the trick and how it got to this point. And then I get on the explanation, and I say method and presentation. So it's the instructions mixed with the pattern I use, because those often demonstrate other lessons in creative presentation, opportunity for audience interaction, and then the credits section. So once I had those, it was kind of filling the gap, and then it was just describing. And I think I learned to be a better writer. I've always loved writing and design from my advertising background, but when you're describing something, it gets a little frustrating sometimes. It's like the things that you think are easy, so innate, like you got to put it this here. But in many ways, that led me to be a better writer. And then I wrote, with Genie for many years.
Yes.
And I think
doing book reviews.
Doing book reviews, and then eventually doing Magicana, which is actually describing tricks, which I felt I'm pretty well graced at this now. So when the Nth Degree, the most recent book, I wouldn't say it's become easier, but I guess in some ways it has. But it challenged me to do to something more. Right. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And the second thing I wanted to come back to was you were talking about being at the castle and all this. So how did you know when a trick was ready to be published? So obviously I can tell, and I think a lot of the viewers can tell, that you've performed these tricks. These aren't just conceptual ideas that you were sitting with some creators. It feels like you've really put some performance time behind these and tried them for people and found out what worked. So when you're going through that creative process, how did you know, what paces did you put it through that said, okay, I think now I'm ready to share this with everyone?
Yeah, good. I mean, it was a lot of sessioning with magicians, but that's not enough. And then some real time, and it probably usually starts small, like my wife or my kids.
Absolutely. Like it does for all of us. You're practicing a trick. The first person you're going to show it to is
exactly. To the point now where if I have a new trick, they just pretend they're sleeping. They're like, I've seen it now, but or friends or whatever. But I even mentioned probably in both books, like even with the magicians we share stuff with, you don't just want to surround yourself with yes people who cheer you on, like, oh, that's great. You want me to say, have you considered this? And so that's good to surround yourself with. You can get feedback in all ends, but and then the performance stuff, and that's a catch-22, right? When's it ready to perform? You get it, if you're going to make this live, but I equate it to a pilot getting their flight hours, right? When it's ready, I don't think I have a quantified checklist. But I think in my mind, like it's went through the hoops, and if I feel like I think it's reached its point, and in many ways, I have many tricks that have remained unchanged, right? I mean, and in my follow-up books, one of the self-published books to one degree called En route. Basically, we're always in pursuit of the final trick, right? But sometimes it's done, but the fresh part comes from it. Every time you perform it is a new way to perform it. I mean, it's the same presentation, but the audience is the X factor. So
it's never the same twice, really.
Right, it's never the same twice, and you have to look at it that way. That's what makes it takes the monotony out of doing this work. But but I'd say once I feel like it got to a point that it was at this fever pitch, and then the audience reaction. I mean, I had an essay I wrote one time on another blog, like your audience are a bunch of tools, but but they are your tools. They're your mirror, right? And I take their feedback seriously. Right. And so once I've gotten some feedback from just audience barometer, and then magicians that I respect, and that's okay. Yeah, I think it's ready.
Speaking of feedback, I'm sure you hear a lot of great things from magicians. Is there one trick that you hear more about than others where people tell you, oh, I love this trick and I do it?
Yeah, interesting.
I'm just curious. I've heard a lot of magicians here, on the cruise on the Nile telling you about different ones. So I haven't heard necessarily one, but I was curious if people come to you and say.
Probably because it's fresh in my head. I lectured predominantly from the Nth Degree. Yeah. And it was nice to get a little bit of a mix, but I think two that rose to the top was the Stranger Sandwich, which I did on the masterclass, but to have it again published in an enduring thing like a book is special. And I got to describe a few extra things too. But this what I call, it was Larry Wilmore, my friend. He said, you have to give this move. If you know the trick, you know what this means. But exactly. But an invisible card turns visible. Like that's a moment that David Regal helped me get. A little 1 degree tweak, and then Larry Wilmore said, like, you should give it a name though, because people are going to be doing this. So I call it the Invisiturn move. But and I'm just on the bus with Michael Amara. He turns, hey John, love this. Love this. Right. Yeah. And then a few other magicians, I love like freestyle aces. What a fun ace production. I never thought of that, and I never need to touch a card. So it's nice to get 2 tricks over the top. One that's just slight heavy relative to one that's like completely slightless. Right. Yet the same amount of thought went into both. But those are 2 of, I think, the 26 tricks in the book that like people are talking about. And of course there's Vino Aces is my signature routine.
Yeah, right. That one comes to mind.
So
For sure.
anyway, I can go on, but those are a few that, you know, and yeah. Anyway, those are a couple.
You guys that are watching, sound off down in the comments below with your favorite trick, John G's. I know that most people, one of the things they like about your books too, at least for me, and I've heard from others, is you do have that mix of simple to do, a little more complex, nothing really knuckle busting.
That's right.
But you have the two.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch real quickly on your library, because you must have a great library, or maybe you're just using the Castle Library, I don't know, because your credits are so good, and it's obvious that you're well read and that you know the genesis of an idea and all this. And I'm just curious, how long have you kind of been into books, and what's your library look like, or the process there with that?
It's funny, when I started magic in 7, but I think I probably became a serious student probably 20 years ago or so, but yeah, there was no YouTube videos.
Right.
You had to learn from books.
That's right.
Or a brick and mortar shop, but few and far between. But yeah, I think I started off with the classics like Royal Road to Card Magic and all that. Expert of the card table. But when I identify with magicians that fit my style, that's what it felt like. I was really connecting. So Star Quality, David Regal's first book, written by Harry Lorraine, right? Highly recommended.
It's a great book.
Yeah, it's okay.
Great book.
And then a lot of Paul Harris books.
Yeah.
Some of them are little pamphlets, but they're so creative, right? And John Bannon, of course, Impossibilia, Smoke and Mirrors. But then there's also, I encourage a lot of people who are getting into magic, just something like the Collected Almanac. Kaufman's Almanac, of like his collection, or any bound volume of epilogue or anything, because this allows you to get a diverse spectrum of tricks from different magicians. And once you zero out, like, I like these magicians' tricks, and then you could dive into their
helps you sample.
That's what I did. So it
helps you sample.
So yeah, I think my library has a few compilation books like that, and then a few specific books of magicians that I really connect with.
So the kind of my final question here, unless something else comes up, is what's next? So you've done 1 degree, and we loved it. We performed a lot of stuff from that. Nth degree is beautiful, and we just did a review on that. Yeah. So what's next? Do you have another book in you at some point in the future, or are you too fresh off this one to say?
I think I do, because I've already had so many ideas already.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them are offshoots on the trick to 1 degree that went to a different place, and some of them are brand new ideas. I'm taking my time, letting it digest. I don't want to just, I don't want to be so reactive. I won't let 14 years go by like I did with 1 degree and the Nth degree.
Thank you.
But there is another book in me, but I will make sure that it's special and keeps rising to the top. Because it's important to me that if I release something, I want it to be a gift to the magic community, and I hope it's received that way. But Nth degree has just been out like 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
And to hear comments like, it's scary, by the way, putting a sequel to a book. And as Josh was saying, that this is one of those rare sequels. It's actually a sequel. It picks up where this left off. It makes a lot of connections, even though both can be read independently. But someone said the Nth degree is the Empire Strikes Back of card book magic,
which is awesome.
I love that.
Can you get a better compliment?
No, I cannot. Right. And I think somebody said it's even better than the original. It's like, to me, because 1 degree got it's 4 languages and had reprints and such good reactions.
One of the best-selling VI books of all time. Yeah.
And this is my marketing hat, but it's a reminder to me on just that was never the goal. The goal was just to do something I was passionate about. Yeah. And put it out there. And that's a lesson for all things we do in life. Like, I do that in my career, in my music. If it gets reaction, that's just an amazing outcome.
Bonus, right?
When I think of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in their garage, starting Apple, like, they never had an outcome in mind. Yeah. They just did it for the love of it. So whatever, I'm just gonna make sure I never lose that part of it. So whatever I do, I'll do it for the love of it. And it may be a 3rd and final degree book. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I like exploring, because right now 1 degree is all about these intentional tactics you can make, small little micro shifts that lead to big outcomes. So the Nth degree is about what is the outcome, what is the result of these accumulation of 1 degree. So the Nth degree is like this ultimate outcome possible. And so if I do another book, it may be a final in that series, and then we'll see where it goes. Yeah.
Well, I love to hear that, and obviously your love and passion shines through.
Thank you.
It's been a real privilege to get to know you
Thanks,
better.
Jeff.
I appreciate
You as well. Yeah, I want to. After we're done with this, we're going to continue workshopping because it was fun to brainstorm with you.
Well, I appreciate you being on the channel. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep reading.